Welcome to Why We Are Christians. My name is Kent Philpott. I'm the pastor of Miller Avenue Baptist Church in Mill Valley, California. We're filming here at Marin TV Studio in San Rafael, California. And someplace else is Jessica Smith. Welcome, Jessica.
Hi, Kent. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, our pleasure. This is our third program that we've filmed. And we got a special topic. We have a special topic, and it has to do, we're looking at yoga and meditation, which is actually the title of one of your chapters in your book, Shattering. And people love this book. They love this book. And I'm just going to read the second paragraph of your introduction to this book. Jessica writes, "In some ways, my story is not so unusual. After rebelling from my Christian upbringing, I spent my 20s traveling the world and exploring the spiritual realm of meditative practices in an effort to find real truth and peace. My ultimate goal was a good one, to make the world a better place by sharing what I learned along the way. Like many on this path, I thought the Bible was ridiculous, and Christians were arrogant, bigots, with extremely obnoxious taste in music. It got to the point that I cringed at the name of Jesus, so irritated was I by his followers, and grew to use his name solely as a swear word." That was you, Jessica.
Pretty much sums it up, yep, for a good decade or so.
Right, okay. Now, you've told before about how that all came about. Give us a little capsule, if you would, Jessica, of how you went from there to here.
Oh boy, how much time do we have?
It's a long story, I know, Jessica, yeah.
It's a bit of a long story, but if I had to summarize it in a nutshell, I would say that my mom was praying for me that I found truth the whole time. I describe myself as a truth seeker, and I traveled the world and studied and practiced and immersed myself in many different practices, from Buddhism to yogic practices in India and South America, and throwing myself into deep meditative practices. And the whole time, as I was seeking truth, my mom was praying, "Lord, she's seeking truth, show her." And I really attribute a lot of what happened to that, to my mom praying that truth would be revealed in my life, because where I was seeking it was, I thought I'd found it. And it turns out I hadn't at all. I was being deceived in a very, very, very deceptive way, because everything that I was doing felt like love and felt like light. And the deeper that I would go along this path, the more I was validated, because the more esoteric experiences I would have, the more warm, fuzzy, euphoric feelings and experiences and everything that goes along with that, I would have, which would validate to me that I was on the path of truth, because it always felt like love. And I thought, well, God is love. This has to be God, because it feels like love. What I didn't know was that feelings can be deceptive. Feelings can be manipulations from the demonic spiritual realm. And that is exactly what I experienced. And to make a long story really short, what ended up happening was the Lord revealed that to me in a very powerful, profound way. Basically ripped the veil off of my eyes and allowed me to experience the reality of all of these spirits and energies that I had been working with. I was a Reiki master, so I was very deeply involved in energy healing. I was a yoga teacher. I had studied deeply at an ashram, lived in an ashram in India. I, again, I lived at a Buddhist center and studied very deeply meditative practices, always only working in what I thought was love and light, always being careful to put up protection, spiritual protection, as I had been properly trained to do. I had received very good instruction. And so I always thought that I was just dealing in love and light. But yeah, in a nutshell, the Lord ripped the veil off and allowed me to experience that what I had allowed inside myself was actually evil. And one day it started coming up and out in a really terrifying way. And in an instant, everything just flashed in mind. Everything from childhood that I had known about the Bible flashed in my mind in an instant. And I just knew that what was happening to me was exactly what the Bible says. And I just knew in a moment, like, oh my gosh, like the Bible is true. Like every word of it is true, not just the parts that I wanted to believe, but it was true. And exactly what it says about all this stuff, that Satan masquerades as an angel of light, that the spiritual realm is deceptive and not to have anything to do with communicating with the spiritual realm. I had thought it was because the Bible thought, oh, it wasn't really real. But that's not what the Bible teaches at all. The Bible teaches that it's real and it's deceptive and it's dangerous and it looks like light. And I fell for the bait and I invited it in those practices. And they finally manifested as I was allowed to experience them as the evil that they actually were, sitting at the kitchen table one day after, again, long story. It's hard to put this in a short period of time, but I had decided to just work with Jesus for multiple reasons. But one, I was really into, as I mentioned, healing and energy healing. And I thought, why am I not working with Jesus? What I remembered from childhood is he's like an ultimate healer. And I had just started feeling like a yearning in my heart again to reconnect with that kind of like a childhood friend. I remembered him always being there for me. I loved talking to him when I was younger. And so I wanted that. I started beginning to want that relationship back. And I also attribute that to my mom's prayers. And so for 1 month, I had decided to just follow Jesus's path, and I had put everything else aside. No, I wasn't doing yoga. I wasn't doing any of my meditative practices. I was really doing my best to I just want to know what Jesus says. I didn't want to know what people at church said about Jesus, or I didn't want to know what anybody's opinion was. I just wanted to read Jesus's words in the Bible and know really like what he actually taught it, and wasn't interested in other people's opinions about it. So I just started reading one of the Gospels, the book of Luke, which is the story from Jesus's birth. And it goes through and talks about like what he actually taught, what his actual words were. And I was floored. I was floored at what Jesus actually taught, and just kind of fell in love with who he actually was, not who he was in my idea and in my head. And the day after I finished the book of Luke, of course, that culminating with Jesus dying and then raising from the dead, I read that all out loud. And then the very next day is when I was sitting at the kitchen table, and out of nowhere, again, it's really hard to explain such spiritual things in words, but the best way I can explain it is a ball of evil and hate and terror and everything terrifyingly evil and dark, like mashed into a ball, as like turn up the intensity as high as it'll go, just like bam in the pit of my stomach out of nowhere. And just absolutely engulfed me with overwhelming terror, and started rising up and out of me. And there are a lot more details than that, and I don't know how far you want me to get into right now, but for right now, just to say, like, that's what did it for me. Like that's what really changed, shattered my book, The Shattering an Encounter with Truth, is really that. It's an encounter with truth that I had, and it shattered my entire paradigm and everything that I had built my entire worldview and life really around, because that was my number one priority in life. I was actually like working on a business plan to start and open a center to teach others how to do these things when this happened. So,
Jessica, thank you for that. That's so important, and you detail that so nicely in your book, Shattering. so you experienced both Hinduism and Buddhism, and you were in India, and I assume it was in the context of Hinduism.
Mm-hmm.
Can you describe differences between Hinduism and Buddhism?
So I wasn't deeply involved in Hinduism. The ashram that where I lived in India, it was in the Hinduism tradition, but they didn't stress that in our teacher training. It was more woven in and kind of, how can I explain it? I would say even there, like the spiritual reality was interwoven, trying to like put it on a Western plate of like, here it's good for all religions. When, for example, we were taught mantras, traditional mantras, and we were taught that it doesn't matter if you understand what you're chanting or not. It's just the sound vibrations will help deepen your practice. And then, of course, they also then they would also teach that certain meanings behind some of the vibrations, and the meanings are there are very real meanings that are invocations to certain deities with each mantra, with each sound that we're just told is just a sound vibration. But the deeper that you dig into it, and I was taught this at varying traditions, both at the ashram and the Buddhist center, that it doesn't matter what you believe about it. Doesn't matter if you understand what you're doing or not, what you're chanting, the positions you're putting your body into. It doesn't matter if you understand what you're doing or not. The act is the invocation. So, in a roundabout way, sorry, let me get back to your question here. What the difference and the similarities, is that you're asking? So Hinduism and Buddhism, there are a lot of parallels, and I'm not an expert in Hinduism by any stretch of the imagination. I have just a very limited understanding of Hinduism. Buddhism, and the tradition where I lived at the Buddhist center, I have a bit of a deeper understanding. But from my understanding, both have lots of different deities. Lots of different gods. And what I was taught is that you both have meditative traditions, right? So, like a lot of different traditions all around the world that aren't Christian, a lot of them are meditative traditions where, it doesn't matter what God, like you can plug in any number of different deities or spirits or guides, if you will. There's a lot of like New Age that parallels this as well, to assist you along your path. And with Hinduism and Buddhism, there are all sorts of different guides and little gods and, spirits that you can tap into, that you plug into, and that you invite and invoke in to help deepen you along your path.
Now, Jessica, do any of in either the traditions, Buddhist or Hinduism, did they ever tell you that you have to be careful that some of these spirits, some of these energies might be evil?
I was always told that there is such thing as dark energies, but that you needed to be careful to put up protection.
Okay. And
you put up spiritual protection. And I always did that. I always followed proper instruction. I always only dealt with light. Okay. So I thought.
Yeah. Okay. So I wanted to catch up on that because in your book, I know that you were exposed to both Hinduism and Buddhism besides other things, and I want to get into a little bit about meditation, yoga and meditation. And I was reading this morning in the new issue, I'm going to hold it up, the January 27th issue of the New Yorker. And in the opening on page 14, I want to just read this and get your comments, and then we'll get into your book, Jessica.
Okay.
Now, this is in the early part of the New Yorker. It says, after language arts and before math the other day, third graders at PS 60, that's Public School 60, Alice Austin School, on Staten Island. They assembled for their daily lesson on feelings. 2 years ago, PS60 began to integrate social emotional learning. That's SEI. It's a new big term that's used in schools across the country. So they began to integrate that, which teaches kids techniques to identify and regulate their emotions into its academic programs. I'm going to skip down to the second paragraph. Here it is. After the pandemic began, the city placed an emphasis on SEI. It is now part of the curriculum in almost 1,000 schools. Meanwhile, Mayor Eric Adams, who leads his staff through breathing exercises, and has said that he wants police officers to meditate before and after every shift. And then a little quote says, "You cannot hate if you meditate." Has underscored the importance of mindfulness in the classroom. All public school students, he said, should start their day with 20 minutes of meditation. Wow, that's big. So, what I'm saying is, look how far into our culture meditation and yoga has creeped. How extensively into kids who don't even know what they're being indoctrinated into. You know, they're not religious schools. If you go to a Catholic school or Baptist school or something, okay, you know what that is. But here, you have this Eastern religion being foisted upon these kids. And I just had to bring that up, Jessica.
Yeah, well, honestly, that just breaks my heart to hear, to be honest. And I know that a lot of you listening right now probably think that that's ridiculous, because you may think that, how could there possibly be anything harmful with yoga and meditation? And I'm here to tell you, if you are a truth seeker, please keep listening, because it is so, so deceptive. The way that it is being presented is not what it is. And there's been a concerted movement from very specific people in this country to present it as something that it's not. And they know that it's spiritual to the core, as many of you know that it's spiritual to the core. Yet they think that they think it's helpful, so they think that warrants covering that up and presenting it as something that it's not, because they think they're helping. And when really it is spiritual to the core, and you cannot separate out the spiritual. Now, that's fine for people who, and I say that tongue in cheek, for people who follow those religions like Hinduism and Buddhism, where you can plug in any number of gods, like that's fine for them. But really, it's not, because it's doing something on a spiritual level. No matter what your belief system is, I have to be honest with you about this, you guys. These are things that I used to do, and these are the things that I was involved in, and I thought that they were love and light, and they are not. And the thing about it is that the spiritual is set into motion. And the thing we have to understand is that all things spiritual are not light. Like, we think like, oh, it's spiritual, it has to be good, right? Well, here, hang with me here, because I'm going to mention the Bible, and I know I'll lose a lot of you there, but please, like, stay with me, because this is super, super important. The Bible actually explains exactly what happens with these practices in the spiritual realm, and what I experienced and what many of you are experiencing, you don't even know it. What happens on an energetic spiritual level is that when we go outside of what the Bible's warnings are, we open ourselves to the demonic spiritual realm. The demonic spiritual realm that pretends that presents itself as light. It can be visions, it can be hearing, it can be feelings, it can feel euphoric, it can feel peaceful. That's why all of these people, that's why it's being introduced into elementary schools. People want the police officers to do it because, we feel peaceful right afterwards. What is going on as a result of this is not peaceful. It is, let me show you some of what some studies actually show. Not the studies that, actually, even some of these are studies that are being funded by yoga groups trying to get a specific outcomes that they can present. And a lot of times what ends up happening is the reality of what yoga actually, the results actually comes out. And so a lot of these studies that are being propagated are both from mindfulness meditation and from yoga, are from, I mentioned, concerted efforts. There was an effort, very specific effort that began in the late 70s by a very, very specific man who started a center for mindfulness. And he was Buddhist. He's quoted saying, like, he couldn't have done what he did, getting it mainstream, if he had kept his Buddhist. Okay, so he founded the Stress Reduction and Relaxation Clinic, Center for Mindfulness and Medicine, Healthcare, and Society. So he founded this, and over the years, since then, he has trained just hundreds and thousands of patients and teachers. The real focus is to conduct studies to try to make it presentable and to try to make it appealing in the scientific and medical world. And so really that's, this many years later, that movement, what we're really seeing is the arms of that, the outgrowing of that. And a lot of this information that I have it's in a book. It's by Candy Gunther Brown, Debating Yoga and Mindfulness in Public Education. I highly recommend it if you're interested in this at all, because she is a Harvard-trained professor. She did all of her schooling up through a doctorate in religious studies at Harvard, and she researched this extensively and was like, whoa, there's a lot more going on here. There's a lot more going on here than physical. And so she compiled all this research and presented it in a book. And it's really, really fascinating. A lot of this information that I'm getting is coming from this. So here's one. It says there's a huge amount of studies that actually show, especially particularly for children, that this is harmful. A 2012 study analyzing yoga for girls in the 4th and 5th grade showed over time the yoga group reported higher perceived stress and feeling worse about stressors, although no increase in frequency of stressors was found. It was just the people who were in yoga over time were more stressed out, even though they may feel better at the moment. That's just one thing. A 2013 comparison study of yoga with physical exercise for children ages 8 to 13 found no significant difference for physical fitness or academic performance, but the yoga group exhibited significantly lower self-esteem. There's also a 2017 survey of yoga practitioners found 60.6% reported negative experience as a result of yoga practice. It's just the yoga pose practice, which is supposedly supposed to be, the physical part. I'm telling you, you can't separate out the physical and the spiritual part. The problems they cited were emotional problems, mental problems, and relationship problems. These are studies, you guys. These are studies probably conducted by people who are trying to get a favorable report. And these are things that are just coming out. There are so many of these. I could spend the rest of the program talking, but I'm just lightly touching on just a few of these and this is just yoga. They cause all sorts of physical problems. There are doctors, physiatrists, surgeons. We had a chiropractor from Southern California I spoke with recently who was saying that he has so many cases of patients that he sees just from yoga-related injuries. The American Yoga Association actually advises against yoga, and they may have changed this by now, but at the time Candy Gunther Brown wrote this book, this is the Harvard professor, so you can rely pretty heavily on her research. The American Yoga Association advised against yoga for children under the age of 16 because asanas, those are the poses, can interfere with still growing nervous and glandular systems. And I do believe they've since changed that because of this push to get it into elementary schools, but they know it's not good for them, and they're still pushing it to get it out there.
So Jessica, one time we only got 2.5 minutes left with this program, but the one gentleman you talked before how he made his clients sign disclaimers.
Yes, that's another thing that Candy Gunther Brown's book discussed, is that there's no accountability for negative contraindications. Like for the mindfulness-based stress relief programs, Candy Gunther Brown's book was discussing how patients would need to sign a release of, like, here are some of the side effects that could happen as a result of mindfulness meditation. Well, nowhere in any of these mindfulness programs for children are there any sort of releases or warnings about, and what are some of these things? What are some of the contraindications that can happen? There was a study called a variety study back in, I believe it was 2012, where they looked at all sorts of different mindfulness meditation results, and like what were the possible side effects of mindfulness meditation in within Buddhism, and the same exact techniques that are in mindfulness meditation programs that are being propagated all throughout, the ones they want the police officers to do and the children in the schools. And so here are some of what this study found were side effects. And this isn't just a study. Gurus warn against this. Yoga gurus warn against this. Teachers warn against this. But here is just some: fear, anxiety, panic or paranoia, depression, dysphoria or grief, change in worldview, delusional, irrational or paranormal beliefs, physical pain, re-experiencing of traumatic memories, rage or aggression, irritation or irritability, and suicidality. Symptoms ranged from days to years. So, and there's percentages here. Like, this is like 82% of the respondents experienced fear, anxiety, panic, or paranoia as a result. And like, why is it that just sitting and doing this mindfulness meditation techniques how is it possible that they could produce such side effects if it wasn't spiritual? I'm telling you, it's because it's demonic, and it activates something deep within that causes these side effects. And it's so deceptive, again, because it doesn't feel like it. And then all of a sudden, like, slowly all these things can start happening on the side, and you're not associating it with your mindfulness meditation practice because it feels peaceful.
Jessica, thank you so much. We're out of time for this program, but stay put. We're going to do another one in just a few minutes. All right. So we've come to the end of our program, and so be looking for another conversation with Jessica Smith. So long.